Welcome to the Porn Reboot podcast, where you get practical tips to gaining control over your porn or sex addiction. We help ambitious men end their out-of-control sexual behavior with pornography, sex, and masturbation so that you can maximize your life, perform at your potential, and remain in control in the driver's seat, which is where you have to be in order to gain or maintain the success you want in life. I'm your host, J.K. Amazi, certified sex and porn addiction recovery coach. Welcome to the episode.
Casual sex. You've probably heard some variation of the claim that casual sex is empty. Today we're going to talk about how that applies to your life as a man who's ending his out-of-control behavior with pornography or sex. First of all, let's start with the dictionary definition of casual. Casual is defined as without definite or serious intention, careless or offhand, passing. So if we were to throw in sex there, it would be sex that is without definite or serious intention, something that is a sexual behavior or sexual interaction with someone that is careless and offhand. I actually like that definition. I like it very much. I believed for years, and you might have as well, and you might still believe this, that casual sex was empty, that there was just nothing involved in it. I mean, it was sex, but there was no purpose to it. The only sort of sex that had purpose to it was sex that was within a committed relationship where you were going to marry that person and procreate and do everything that society said or expected of you. And I believed this for years. In fact, sometimes I was a proponent of it. I was judging people I saw doing things that were outside of a committed relationship, ironically, while I was secretly addicted to pornography. As I began the process of going through my reboots, I began to question everything I knew about sex and how culture, society, and evolution shaped the way that we viewed sex. For those of you who are listening that confuse reboot and recovery, I want to make it clear that rebooting is different from recovery. Quick refresher. Recovery, simply put, is regaining that which you lost to your out-of-control behavior. Regaining values that you lost, regaining beliefs that you lost, regaining sometimes material things and relationships and mindsets and so on. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that can be healthy for some and unhealthy for others. But I don't believe that it is the best path to freedom. I believe that you're still going to be confined when you recover, and I believe it is a longer and a much more challenging process than rebooting because you are older by the time you try to recover something. You're addicted at one point in time, and at another point in time, years later, you're trying to recover that which you lost without accepting the reality that you are not even the same person. You are older. It is time for new values. You should be at a different financial point, relationship point, physical point, social point in your life. It is far easier to do something else, which is rebooting. Hit that reset button. Rebuild your values from where you are. Rebuild your expectations about finances, relationships, where you should be in life. Far healthier, far more positive, far more possibilities, far less comparison, far less visiting the past and all the negative emotions that come with it. So, as I said, when I was going through my reboot, I questioned everything. Why did I question everything? Because unlike recovery, which is about getting back that which you lost in your culture, lost in society, conditioning, you are questioning everything when you rebuild it. So when you choose a value, when you're a rebooter, you're asking yourself, okay, why did I have this value? Where did this value come from? Does this value serve me? Oh, I got this from mom and dad. It served them. Does it serve me? Is my experience the same? Oh, it's so beautiful to see this in the brothers who come through our program as they begin to examine it. And sometimes they'll look to me, the reboot heroes, the coaches, to define it for them, but we won't because you are the best expert at yourself. You have to figure this out for yourself. I began to question everything I knew. I was never able to find proof that casual sex was empty or meaningless. Therapists would warn that casual sex as a porn addict would lead to sex addiction. When I began to have sex, it started at the age of 21, I was viewing pornography all those years. I'm busy being a hypocrite, judging other people. The only sexual experiences that I found to be regrettable were those sexual experiences that I had where there was no intimacy. And these were usually driven by pornography. So where it was just, I wanted to just hit and run, just have sex because of this person's body alone. I didn't want to know who the person was. I was not interested in. Those ones were the ones that sometimes they were regrettable, but they were empty in that there was nothing after them. In fact, it got to a point where I even forgot that I had those sexual experiences. So as I continued rebooting, again, I'm rebuilding my values. I'm finding the things that work for me. I'm finding the things that don't work for me. I quickly pivoted to prioritizing intimacy before sex because I realized that when I would engage in a sexual encounter that was driven by pornography and deep fantasy and compulsion, it would often end up bringing up either negative emotions or nothing at all, in which case it was probably a waste of time. So I was like, why did I even do that? That was just like masturbating. There was nothing there. And that was another human being that was doing that with me. Neither of us benefited from this. We just wasted time to satisfy a very carnal urge. I hope I'm using the word carnal in the right way. I also realized that as I rebuilt my values, when it came to sex, first of all, pornography had taken intimacy away from my life. There's no intimacy in pornography. There isn't at all. There's no closeness. There's no emotional closeness. There's no bonding. You're just viewing people doing something. Even those people you're viewing something are being paid for it. No intimacy. So it's like, okay, cool. I'm going to create this requirement for intimacy before sex. And this led to literally all my sexual experiences to move from being empty. I'm not saying all of them were empty. I'm saying those that were empty completely disappeared. And they went to what I would realistically and honestly describe as satisfying to mind-blowing and sometimes almost spiritual in nature, because emotional closeness became the measurement for whether anything was going to happen. If I did not feel the emotional closeness, it was not going to happen. And here was another thing about intimacy. When there was intimacy, sex was not a requirement. When there was intimacy, I could go on a date, I could connect with a woman, and we both knew the intimacy was there, but there was no rush or physical need to consummate the intimacy. Depending on the level of the intimacy, sometimes you just wanted it to go on. And sometimes you would even go like, you know what? The sex might, kind of complicate this. Let's take it a little bit easy. So that's the beauty of intimacy, because it's emotion from one person, emotion from the other, you guys actually getting to know each other. It is enriching to your life. The reason I'm talking about casual sex is that so many men open their mouth and just fucking parrot it. It's empty, it's casual, and they cannot back it up by anything. And I hate hearing that shit. I hate hearing men just parrot stuff that they have not experienced themselves, and it just comes out of conditioning. I will listen to you if you tell me something that is based on your experience and repeated experiences. We have men who've gone out there, and because they were just chasing a sexual experience, I did so as well, they had sexual experiences, and it's confirmation bias. It confirmed that it was empty because you did it and then you felt guilty or you didn't feel any connection with the person, and then all your conditioning came up. Oh, I used her. There was no connection. That didn't feel good. She didn't call me back, because you're actually craving intimacy. And there was nothing that happened after that. So you're disappointed. Of course, it is going to reinforce the belief that sex outside of a committed relationship or sex outside of a monogamous relationship is empty. Here's what this quote unquote casual sex, quote unquote, right? What people call casual sex, or what people actually call casual sex is, they just say, oh, if you meet somebody, I don't care what the connection is. If you have sex with them and you have not known them for a long time, which is a very subjective definition of knowing somebody or getting to know somebody, If you haven't known them for a long time, or if they're not your girlfriend, or if they're not your wife, then and you have sex, then that's just casual sex. If you're having sex with multiple people, that's just casual sex. That's just people just running them out. Know that you have no idea of the connection that people are having. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not defending casual sex. I'm letting men know that having sex is not a casual thing. I'm letting you know that there is a possibility which is preferential, which is good for you. Good, quote unquote, right? You decide that for yourself. Which can be enriching, which can be healthy, but you might be holding yourself back because you're seeing things as black or white. If she's not my girlfriend and we don't have a deep relationship, or we don't have some sort of commitment, then it is casual. Here's what sex did for me. What some people may call casual sex, which was sex outside of a relationship. Sex with women that I had met and only known for like 2 dates. A deeper appreciation of intimacy. And this is while I was rebooting. I'm in a relationship now. I realized that intimacy could not coexist with pornography in my life. So having intimate sex with women made me realize that I did not like pornography. Pornography had no space in that lifestyle. Not casual sex, intimate sex. Sex where getting to know the person and seeing them as a human being was the priority. The next thing I experienced was desensitization to pornography. I began to realize that real sex, intimate sex, was nothing like pornography. Nothing at all. In fact, an example I've often given was that I used to think that, I used to like blowjobs. I'd watch pornography that had blowjobs. I'd masturbate to it. But the first time I experienced it, I hated it. And I've never liked it since. It's just not been a thing. It's just like, I don't like it, which is very surprising because I really thought I did. And I probably watched hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of scenes that had blowjobs in them. Intimate sex made me realize that it just wasn't a thing. So this losing porn's grip on my life. This may happen to you as well. I also lost my misogynistic views of women. Yes, my porn addiction, and you may have experienced this, led to what I would call, let's just call it light misogyny. It was an anger towards women from the things I could not attain from women. It was jealousy. It was also came from jealousy. I was jealous of men who could be with women. And you know the crazy thing? Back then when I was addicted, I would see a man with a beautiful woman and there was jealousy towards this man, but it was not because of the relationship. It was because of the sex, because I was a porn addict. I had no concept of intimacy. I was just like, you get to fuck a hot girl, or who the fuck do you think you are? Blah, 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 blah. You're probably this and this and this. And then I would blame the women too. They just use men. They just use men. Women are not like this. It was horrible. A lot of it was rooted in pornography because that was my primary interaction with the type of women I desired. Is it your primary interaction with the type of women you desire? It was a prejudice. Prejudice is to prejudge somebody. And you're going to prejudge people when the way you view them primarily comes from something like pornography. So I met many women. I learned about their lives over the years. I learned about their fears. I learned about their securities. I learned about their kinks, the things they were into. And honestly, even talking about this, all these experiences from my past, it brings up a pleasurable feeling within me. It is literally reminiscing on great memories of connections that I had with other human beings. I have to think back to remember the ones where there was alcohol and just, again, what you would call casual sex. The stuff that comes from the definition of without definite or serious intention. Serious intention does not have to be marriage or monogamy. That is your conditioning. If that is your thing, go for it. But I believe that intimacy is a serious intention. It is. Because there are some women that I met once I had made intimacy a priority that I would not have sex with because they were not ready to be vulnerable or open up. And for me, that became a red flag. I was like, I'm paranoid. I don't know. I don't want to have sex with a woman who wants to open up. I didn't care how attracted she was to me. Like, intimacy is a serious deal in my life. It had become a new value. It was a rebooted value. I was like, oh, you don't want to do the intimacy thing? You just want to fuck and not me. Interestingly enough, that makes you more attractive, where you can reject a woman because you're not feeling it. She's like, what's up with you? What's wrong with you? I'm just like, I'm just not feeling it. My brothers out there who are struggling with PIED, if you're struggling with porn-induced erectile dysfunction or performance anxiety, one of the first questions I'll ask a man who I'm coaching through that is, I'm just like, have you talked to your partner about this? Like, oh, I've kind of mentioned it, but not the porn part. And I say, build your intimacy to the point that you can have the conversation with them. And you will find that your anxiety disappears. Intimacy is a killer of anxiety. You'll understand that when you actually start being more open and seeking intimacy. So I suppose it would be fair to say that that period of time before I met my current partner, who, by the way, if you're new to the podcast, I've been with for, I'd say about 15 and a half years now, that was a rite of passage for me. I became better at sex. I began to understand different women's bodies and the way that they were actually pleasured, not just from pornography, which made my life a lot more easier when I met my partner. Okay, women are different. All these women have different preferences, and there's some things that are common across the board. I also became a better partner. Like I said, I've been in a low drama relationship. There's no fights. There's no yelling. Probably raised our voices at each other once in 15 years. And I attribute part of this to the experiences that I had with other women prior to entering the long-term relationship. The rest of it was a commitment to rebooting. That's it. Because you build relationships from being accountable to other men. You also build intimacy by being accountable to other men, to being honest, to being open with yourself, to constantly growing, to communicating with your therapist and your coach, which you will then bring into your relationship. Number one killer of relationships is a lack of communication. They say it's sex and they say it's money, but it's the lack of communication about sex and money and all those other things that kills long-term relationships. It's the same thing that will kill your marriage or your relationship if you don't talk about those things. You're not talking and you're not communicating because you don't want conflict. But it is conflict with a resolution that breeds intimacy. Now, when I became a Reboot coach, I once again came across men who were, in a well-intentioned way, these brothers were saying that casual sex is meaningless. I would see it in our groups. We have a public group. You guys should check it out. There's a link to it at the bottom of the podcast. They'll say it's gonna leave you empty. It's empty. It's meaningless. Blah blah. And some of these guys, I was just giving them the side eye because I'm like, bro, I know you've only had sex with like one woman in your life. So what are you talking about? Anyway, I gathered data. I've been coaching men to freedom from pornography for 12 years, and as I began to gather data, here's what I learned. First of all, I learned that most men are hypocrites. I was one of these hypocrites. You denounce casual sex, yet binge watch material, which is much worse than casual sex. And you never question why you're living your life vicariously through pornography. You only think it's bad and you want to stop it, but you never address your need for sex. You're so scared to question, why is it that I'm in a committed relationship with a woman, yet I keep watching pornography? Why? Why are all men doing that? If we were meant to be with one woman, why are we doing that? That's a crazy question. That's a scary question to ask yourself. Do you have the balls to do it? I'm not encouraging you to not be monogamous. Like I said, I am with one woman and I've been with one woman for 15 plus years. I'm saying question it. Stop being afraid. And if you're afraid, you're like, oh, I don't know if I did, come talk to me. Let's talk. Let's have the conversation. Let's open up that Pandora's box. I promise you, whatever you find at the bottom is that which will save you. Carl Jung said that. That which we hide, that which we keep away from us, will destroy us. And that which we reveal, that which we bring into the light will ultimately save us. Do not hide it. Your hiding it is what is feeding your out-of-control behavior. Because you are imagining yourself as a participant in that sexual scenario that you are viewing, to the point of obsession and compulsion. That is what you are doing. You are wishing you are there. You are playing a video over and over again on a regular basis. So at some level, you want this. And we have to talk about and address why this is and why there is a conflict in your values, because that conflict in the way you are living or the things you want, whether you are married, you have a partner, whatever it may be, or you want to be monogamous, but your private behavior is in conflict with that, that is creating friction that is holding you back from being your highest self. It is holding you back from expressing your talents. You don't understand why you're not able to move forward, but it is because of this conflict of values and beliefs. And once that yoke is removed from your neck, it is phenomenal how men's lives change. It's phenomenal how men just start to blossom in their lives because that inner weight has been lifted from you. And it was lifted because you spoke in a safe place. You spoke about the fearful things and the fearful thoughts. Here's another thing I realized. 12 years of gathering data, coaching men about sex, what we call casual sex. Men who are conditioned to believe in monogamy via religion or culture are more likely to be against casual sex. So if your religion conditioned you to do that, or you watch a shit ton of Disney and Hallmark movies, all that stuff, you're more likely to just be against casual sex for no good reason. When I dig deep with some guys, sometimes I'll just do it for fun. They'll be like, oh, but STDs and blah, 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 blah. And I can debunk everything all day long. Another thing I found out was that most men cannot define casual sex. If I ask a man, what is casual sex? They're all over the place. Also, men who are against casual sex have often never defined what sex looks like in their life. Again, they've never defined it for themselves. Many of them were just like, oh, well, you have a girlfriend in college, you have sex, and then I guess you marry someone or you meet one of those girls who's your girlfriend, you really like her, and then you marry her, and then you have the same type of sex forever. You've never defined your sexual preferences or how it fits into your lifestyle, which is a key part of rebooting, because many of you who are listeners to this podcast, y'all will define other areas of your life. Y'all will define, for instance, your career and your financial life. You're like, yeah, so, I'm working hard, I'm saving for retirement, I'm putting money in my investments, I'm always on the lookout for investments, I'm improving my skill set at work so I can get promoted. Sometimes I'm starting a side hustle on the side. Like, you've defined it for yourself. Some of you have gone as far as to have an enough is enough number. Like, if I have this amount of money, I can do this and this and this, but you haven't done it for your sexual life. Interestingly enough, the area of your life that you do not define at all, and I'm not saying you should take action in the areas you've defined, just the areas that you have not defined, there's no roadmap to it at all. Even though you've not taken the first step, often the areas that are going to sabotage you. If you've not defined what your health is going to be like, you're going to be surprised by something that catches you in your 30s, your 40s, 50s. Define it. Well, in the program, we make you do it. I will always ask you different areas of your reboot capital: social, your physical, which includes your health, your social, which includes your dating and your relationships. I will ask you in your spiritual life. Yes, your spiritual life. Even those of you who do not define yourself as spiritual, I will ask you what your beliefs are and how do you see the world. Some of you may you're like, oh, I'm an atheist, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever you are. At a certain point, you defined this and there was no roadmap. You're just like, yeah, I just do these practices. And I'm like, to what end? Like, oh, you know what? I'll be honest with you, I've been going to church, I've been going to the temple, I've been going to the mosque, but it's really just become like an identity for my family. We're not really moving forward. We've been focused on the kids. We've really been focused on a career and some health issues. Some things came up. So we really haven't defined this. I'm like, well, let's take some time to just have a definition of it, the idea of the destination, and see how that changes your self-image. It's so powerful. Here are the two biggest realizations, just to round up this episode. The first realization that I had, and this is everything. This is from both being in a relationship for as long as I have. This is from my days of having sex and exploring sexuality. This is from 12 years of coaching men to sexual freedom. Two biggest realizations. The first one was that about sex was that women are not as hung up on casual sex, this is in quotes, as men are. In fact, I have only ever heard men bitch about casual sex. Isn't that interesting? That it's only men who use the term casual sex. The women who use the term casual sex only used it when they were trying to get into a relationship or as a dating strategy with nice guys, because they already knew that nice guys reacted a certain way to casual sex. So women took cues from men to get what they wanted. Of course, they had to take cues from men and pander to men, quote unquote, pander, because that's their survival mechanism in a very primal way. Men are big and strong and dangerous and capable of violence. So women had to use other methodologies to get the things they want. So they will tell the man what he wants to hear. A woman could have had sex with 50 dudes. And then later on in life, when she's in her late 20s, she's like, you know what? I want to get married. I feel like having kids. And when she starts meeting men, she's going to say up front, like, I don't do casual sex. But she's had lots of casual sex. I'm generalizing, of course. Not every woman is like that. But she's only using the word casual sex because that's what Mr. Right is going to look for. Mr. Wrong is not going to complete the date or see her again. Why? Because he is looking for casual sex. Mr. Right, who is often a nice guy, is like, yes, this is the type of woman that I want to be with. A woman saying to a man on a date that I'm not looking for casual sex can elicit a very predictable set of responses from a man. We talk about that in our Dating Reboot program. The second realization that I had was that men's views of casual sex are actually heavily influenced by your ability as a man to gain access to sexual partners. Let me say it again. Your views of casual sex, whether you like it or not. You can disagree with me all you want, but they are heavily influenced by whether you can get access to sexual partners or not. Men who do not have access to casual sex are more likely to restrict other men from having what we define as casual sex. More likely to dissuade men from doing that. So if your culture or religion, which is likely run by males with restricted sexuality, restricted your access to sex, then you are more likely to get frustrated and view casual sex negatively because you don't have access to it. Men who have access to sex, who can have sex, they don't care about cock blocking you. They really don't. They're like, go have all the sex you want to have, bro. I don't care. It's the men who don't have access to it, who are just, by don't have access, I mean they don't have the skill, they don't have the looks, or they may have the looks and the skill, but their religion or their conditioning or something or the other prevents them psychologically from taking action, which is a mental restriction. Even if you were one of those men and you did have sex, your shame, the lack of intimacy that I spoke about earlier in this podcast episode, and your conditioning would automatically make it a negative experience. And these are the men who's like, no. I tried having sex. I had casual sex a few times and it was definitely empty. I tried it again and it was empty again. Honestly, I tried it a few years later, a few months later, it was still empty. So now I am confirmed that because it is empty for me, it is empty for everybody else. And this is what I've been told my whole life. I had to be a dumbass and go out there and experience it myself. And now I know it's empty. They are unaware of their conditioning because they have not questioned it. And if they're struggling with an out of control behavior with pornography, then they have not rebooted. They have not examined their values and their beliefs at the deepest level. And let me say one more thing for my conservative brothers, my brothers who are spiritual and religious, that the end point of this program is often some sort of spiritual awareness and in some cases, some sort of spiritual awakening or reawakening. I'm not saying that don't be scared and don't let that dissuade you from the program. I'm not going to church getting down on my knees and praying or trying to convert anybody to any religion. It's just what we've started noticing in our program in the last couple of years only. That when a man hits the maintenance stage of his reboot and he has let go of his deep desire for sex and for pornography and for many of these things, other areas of his life begin to flourish and he begins to have the mental capacity and the space to actually start questioning other things because he's questioned his values and beliefs and everything. And he realized, Where did these things come from and why? And is there something greater than this? This often leads to a spiritual journey or going back to their religion or former spiritual practice that they abandoned for some reason or the other. So before your dogmatic conditioning kicks in as you listen to this and, oh, this is bad, this is not good, this sounds like it's this, you may be dealing with that internal conflict. I want to let you know that we're real here at Porn Reboot. We just look at the reality of life as it is, and we constantly try to drop any conditioning that may get in our way. We are real and raw about life. There is no moralizing here. If you're not socially calibrated, we're going back to the men who feel that casual sex is empty. If you're not socially calibrated and if you don't know how to be an attractive man, then you're more likely to cope with that by buying into the belief that it's probably empty anyway. It's just probably empty. I'm not the kind of guy that can get with those type of women. Let me be clear. The Porn Reboot system only encourages intimate sex. Whether you choose to do so within a monogamous relationship or not, it's none of my damn business and none of the business of any of my coaches. But if you show up and you tell me or any of our coaches, anyone on the team that listen, one of my goals and my definition is to only have sex within a monogamous relationship, we will set up a reboot blueprint for you and we will help you do just that. It is what you want. We will get you there. And we have gotten many men there. Now, I have collected over the years numerous studies that prove every single point I made. In fact, I'm going to read an excerpt from one of the studies. It's from the Journal of Adaptive Human Behavior and Physiology. And the title is Changes in Positive Affect Due to Popularity in an Experimental Dating Context Influence Some of Men's, but Not Women's, Socio-Political Attitudes. This was published on the 14th of March, 2022. And the excerpt goes, we aim to test whether dating popularity among potential romantic partners would influence sexual and other broader socio-political attitudes. So we led participants to believe that they would be sending a self-introduction video to 5 opposite-sex peers who told them that they would either date them or not want to date them. This pattern suggests that receiving many rejections might make men more against casual sex than they normally would be. In line with previous findings, there was no main effect of dating popularity on women, but unpopular men were less accepting of female promiscuity and willing to wait longer for sex than popular men were, suggesting that being unable to attract romantic partners makes men more against people having casual sex and more unwilling to have casual sex themselves. Based on the logic of fitness costs and benefits, our results suggest that short-term mating is costlier for unpopular men than it is for popular men, and that disapproving of casual sex therefore advances the mating interests of unpopular men more so than those of popular men. The men were significantly more supportive of casual sex than women only when they were popular with opposite sex peers. So here's the thing. If the men were more popular, even though in reality they may not have been for the purposes of this, men would actually be cool with it. They'd be cool with casual sex. They didn't care who women were having sex with. But if they were not popular, they were against casual sex. And they wanted to change the world to be a place where casual sex was difficult to have. So again, just for those of you who have missed it, it is from the Journal of Adaptive Human Behavior and Physiology, the March 2022 publication. Go ahead and check it out. Google it, put it up on your phone and read it. If you're one of those who reads journals, I read journals every week. That's our take on the concept of casual sex.
I'm JK, your brother in this struggle. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Porn Reboot podcast. I'll speak to you later on in the week. If you found this episode helpful, here are 4 ways I can help you with your out-of-control sexual behavior for free. The first way is to grab a free copy of my book, Confessions of a Porn Addict, 7 Secrets of Porn-Free Men at elevatedrecovery.org, or visit the link in the description below this episode. The second way is if you're not sure where to start, but you'd like to learn more about my team and I, if you'd like to spend time with like-minded professionals and business owners who are controlling their behavior, then join our free and confidential group, the Porn Reboot Group on Facebook. There's a link to join in the description below this episode. The third way is if you need help right now because you have a burning issue, your behavior with pornography is hurting you mentally or emotionally, you're about to lose your relationship, you want to live up to your potential, be an authentic man, and free yourself from shame, guilt, and underachieving, then click on the link in the description below this episode that says free coaching call. And the fourth way is to leave us a 5-star review if you enjoy this podcast, so that we can reach more men who are struggling in silence and bring back the lessons we learn from coaching them to freedom.